is Ellen Long Stillwell, and she's going to be talking about that and a lot of other stuff in general. So, Ellen, first of all, thanks so much for taking the opportunity to spend some time with us today. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Rob.
All right. So, as we start the interview, Ellen, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself besides the generic things that I just said?
Sure. Well, I've been a nurse for a very long time. I actually graduated nursing school in 1986, right into the AIDS pandemic.
Oh.
And so I became a mother and I married. I was away from nursing for a little bit. And then I had personal deaths occur. My parents, my sister, my niece, my brother-in-law, my husband, my brother. And through it all, through my nursing experience and my personal experience, I decided when I became a widow at 42 that I'm going to be a hospice nurse. So that's what I'm doing now, daily.
So before we get into the book and hospice in general, first of all, you've went through a lot of trials and tabulations throughout your life. How did you get through all that? Because it just seems like extremely hard in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was. But I happened to be one of 7 children, and we all did it. I mean, with each illness and death, we all came together and we helped each other. But I can't deny that it was really very difficult. Yeah, it was really very difficult.
Well, Ellen, that's great because I know a lot of people have families, whether it's siblings or uncles or aunts, or someone dies, they don't come together. So
well,
it's
that's true. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of those families around, unfortunately. It's sad to say. And I'm sure you deal with that in hospice, where it's a mother or a husband that's in there, whatever it may be. And the family and friends, there's the few that come around, but the majority don't.
Yeah, that is a difficult situation. I actually have a patient right now who really has no one, really lovely person, but, moving from a different country and situated right here in New York, and, actually came from California. So really, all of a sudden a sickness, and there's really not that teamwork of people around. But you know what, there's different ways to get around that.
Yeah, so talk about that before we get into the book. How do you get around that when there is no one coming around to help you as a nurse? Because it seems like it doubles up on your job. Not only do you have to take care of this person, but you have to be their friend, their family in general.
Oh, and that's what happens all the time, really. That's really the beauty of it. But in hospice care, when someone is certified to come on to hospice care, it's a team approach. So there's a nurse visiting, a social worker. We collaborate with the medical doctor. There's a spiritual care counselor, and there's volunteers. So there's a team of people under the Medicare hospice benefit who come into people's homes. There's also a home health aide. So Monday through Friday, 3 or 4 hours, either in the morning or the afternoon, there's a home health aide. Well, with that being said, there's still more hours in a 24-hour period. So we do reach out to the possible people who will help this individual. That's really, our feelers go out to those folks before the individual is really expected to hire privately for the 24/7 part of the day.
For millennials listening, what would you tell the people that are in their 30s or, even 40s that are listening as far as hospice care goes? What should they need to know? What should they be thinking a little forward on?
This is a really good question, Rob. And it's such a good question. I've had this conversation with my 2 children. And what I would advise is what I did with my 2 children. I have a 25-year-old and a 28-year-old. So have the conversation with your parents. It's a hard, difficult conversation, but once it's done, you don't have to revisit that conversation. And there's paperwork that should be filled out. Like my older son wanted to be my healthcare proxy. My younger son wanted nothing to do with that, although he's the alternate healthcare proxy. Right. And then I discussed with them, when I can't communicate what my needs will be and what my decision is. So we talked about no IV fluids, no artificial feeding tubes. And we wrote it down on this actually formal piece of paper, which we got from our physician. And I have a will made up. They know where the will is. We discussed everything that the will contains. Sure. And actually my siblings do come into the picture to help out, which That's we've great. All agreed to. So I would say for millennials listening, have the hard question with your parents and then get it over with. It's done.
Is it tougher to deal with men more so in hospice than women? Obviously, we think of the woman as the nurturer, the carer, whereas the men, sometimes they don't even know how to do any of those things, which is quite sad. That's another topic for another day.
Right.
but is that the kind of tough things that you deal with, is more so with men than women as far as in the picture?
You mean as caregivers?
Right, correct. Yeah,
as caregivers. Well, I have to say there really isn't that defining line when it comes down to caring for this person that you love. It really, that defining line really is blurred. And I find that most people who love this dying individual are capable of doing much more than they ever expected. And as a hospice team, we come in and we educate. We're teaching all the time. We can't be there 24/7, but in our visits, we're educating what needs to be done.
All right. Again, this is Ellen Long Stillwell. She's the author of the new book, Love, Death, and Love. And if you do look at the background when she's talking, you'll definitely see it in the background. For people that are listening also, if you could subscribe, like, and share this interview, we greatly appreciate that also. So Ellen, as we move into the interview, I want to go into the book, Love, Death, Love. What made you want to write the book?
Well, when my children were young, after my husband passed away, I actually was a hospice volunteer. That's one person, part of the team approach. So I did that for 5 years. And I participated in it was a floor within a nursing home. So it was a hospice floor, and I would go once a week. And the nurses loved to see me come because they knew just what patients they wanted to send me to. They needed someone to sit and listen and chat with them. And, you know, they just would thank me for the help that I gave the patients. And I really enjoyed going, you know, and just to be rewarded that you could be helpful at that time of someone's life. And I wasn't acting as a nurse, I was a volunteer. So I realized what I was saying to the patients was really the same thing over and over again. So back in 2012, I started writing down what it was that I was saying to these patients as a volunteer, which was so helpful. So the book is short stories. And many of the short stories are what I tell the patients, what I discuss with the patients.
So can you talk about the significance of the title, Love, Death, Love?
Oh, sure. Because when we're caring for these individuals, we love them.
Right.
And then they die. But that love doesn't die. We continue to love them. And I actually feel, you know, that so many years later, after my husband's death, I continue to love him. My children love their father, and he loves us. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a cycle. And the way I thought of the title is, in the book in general, like that cycle, like, and you as a nurse, you know, you go and you love the person you're taking care of, you're trying to help them out, then they pass away, and then you move on to the next person. And it's just a repeat cycle of what you do personally as a nurse.
Oh, that's very good. I like that too. Yeah, that's great.
That's what I was thinking of, but no, I hear what you're saying for sure.
Absolutely. Right.
Right. So we'll keep moving into the interview. Again, this is Ellen Long Stillwell, and she is the author of the new book, Love, Death, Love. And again, if you're listening to us for the first time, please subscribe, share, and like this interview. As we keep moving into the interview, Ellen, can you tell us, you know, why you wanted to become a nurse? I guess you dabbled a little bit into this at the beginning, but, you know, we think of nurses, obviously, with COVID-19 and the amazing work that they're doing, and they're putting their lives on the line for us. So, my question is, why did you want to become a nurse? And I actually want to get into the COVID-19 aspect of hospice too, when you're
Sure.
ready.
Well, during college, I
Mhm.
took my liberal arts courses, and it included biology. And I realized I really enjoyed biology. So when it came time to choose a major, what really required more and more biology was nursing. So that's actually why I chose nursing. But then the further along you get into nursing, you come out of the classroom and you're in clinicals and you're dealing with patients. And I just realized I'm a people person. I loved meeting patients at the bedside. I actually just love it. And it's very rewarding. I remember my first nursing interview for my first nursing job. The HR person said, "What's your philosophy of nursing?" And I was like, I was stumped because no one had never asked me that question before. But then it just flew out of me. The fact that my mom stroked when she was 50 years old. I was 15. So again, my 7 siblings took care of our mother. She stroked, she lived, but she was paralyzed and sent home paralyzed. So the 7 of us took care of her. She learned how to walk again. She learned how to talk again. She became mom again. So it was very rewarding to see her come around again from something so acute. It was so acute. And then she became well again. So in my first nursing interview, that's what I explained. That's why my philosophy of nursing is it's such a rewarding job.
It is. You guys do amazing things, and I don't think nurses get enough recognition. I know they are starting to get some recognition during the COVID, but I think they should have got it way before then. But that's par for the course. Anyways, as we keep moving into the interview, Ellen, my question is, we talk about hospice, and we've been talking about this throughout the interview, and it is really depressing at times, and is an amazingly tough job. Not only is it depressing, obviously, for the person that's in that pain, in that agony, and knows that its time is almost up for them, but it's also depressing for the family, for yourself as you are working with these people. So do you ever have those feelings that it gets kind of really down in the dumps sometimes as working with some of these people? And how do you
Well,
get through that? How do you pull through that?
right. Well, how do I pull through that is really good self-care.
Okay.
Yeah. So this morning I have exercised, I really eat very well
Mhm.
and take vitamins every day. And I just made plans this morning with my younger son for Monday.
Oh,
So we're
nice.
going to great adventure. We're riding roller coasters. So
Oh,
I have, yeah. So
where at?
I always do something to look
Yeah,
forward to.
sure.
And yeah, and I also work 4-day weeks. So
Right.
I'm off every Monday. But I have to say I actually rarely get down in the dumps regarding my job because it
Mhm.
is rewarding. When someone has a terminal diagnosis, when someone comes on to hospice, there's some acceptance level by the time they come on to hospice.
Mhm.
And if they're not in that acceptance place, that's what we're working on as a hospice team. Because when a terminally ill person accepts the fact that they're dying, it actually becomes beautiful. So there's very little, say, down in the dumps. It actually becomes quite peaceful and quite loving. And I would say almost 100% of the people that I'm with, as that person dies, the patient is 100% ready, and so is the family. And it's actually beautiful.
Well, that's a great way to describe it, because I was looking at it the other way as far as the depression, and it was reminding me of like politics, where you finally think something good's going to happen. It just everything crumbles and stuff like that. So that's the way I was thinking of
The
it. But
rug gets pulled out from underneath you. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So now I guess I could think of it more so the way you think of it, as far as
Hmm.
a rewarding experience as
Hmm.
that goes. So I think obviously that's the better way to think of it. But
Because it's part of life. Like not any one of us can avoid it. So if we can change our perspective that it's actually part of life, and there is depression and there is fear, but these are things that we feel and we pay attention to, and then we move on to acceptance, peace, and love for actually a beautiful, comfortable death. That's the goal of care with hospice, a comfortable death.
So obviously there's a lot of people that are afraid of dying.
Oh,
so
yes.
how do you get them comfortable, as you've been talking about?
Well, there's a lot of life review. When someone reviews their life up until the point where we're meeting and discuss it, basically with a stranger, it's really incredible how cathartic it is to talk to someone that you're just getting to know about your whole life. So that actually is a big part of coming to acceptance and getting over the fear, because you can't do anything about it.
Right.
So when you do this life review and comfort is achieved, when pain is no longer an issue, and everyone's not in pain as they die, but cancer patients do have physical pain. So all that has to be taken care of. The goal of care of hospice is comfort on many different levels. And the first thing is physical pain is cared for. And then we can tackle the emotional facets of dying. And there's very few people who, I'm going to say a childish term, go kicking and screaming. It's very few, because if you don't accept it, then that's very uncomfortable. And so you have a team of people around you helping you to get over the fear, that hurdle of fear. It's a hurdle. And then once over that hurdle of fear, really it is acceptance, peace, and love, and a beautiful death.
So I know obviously COVID-19 has happened and you're in New York, so I know you've saw a lot of this firsthand. Have you worked or even heard stories of anybody? I don't know how the hospice is now because of COVID. I guess I'll ask the question this way. How has hospice care changed since obviously COVID-19 started in March of 2020?
Well, right now we have 0 COVID patients.
Okay.
And so, it really hasn't changed. Nursing in general, when you need to take care of, care for yourself with PPE, that's nursing 101. So now that it's a pandemic, we're just utilizing the skills that we were taught. But when it first got so terrible here in New York, and terrible fast, oh my goodness, it was like, it was just, there was nobody outside except me. I mean, I was alone on the city streets going from patient to patient. Wow. And it was so quiet. And we had to use the PPE going into people's homes. And then we had to educate the family members how to use PPE, because we come into the home, we're all suited up. I mean, literally suited up. And nobody has masks on, but the patient is COVID positive. So that means everyone here in the room is now infected. So there was a lot of education on how to protect family members from the patient who had COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went into houses where the patient was COVID positive and all the people were just hanging around in there?
Hanging. They were home. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, was this before when they said, because if you remember at the beginning, they said you don't have to wear masks, and obviously they switched it around. The talking point on that was they told people not to wear masks at the beginning because the PPE rather shortage. Now people have their thoughts on that, but regardless of that, so is this what you're talking about at that time, or is this even after that?
Well, actually, yes, you're right. There was a shortage of PPE. We couldn't, normally we would supply any supplies needed. Well, we couldn't supply gowns and masks and goggles. We couldn't. So people really had to get them on their own. And And at first the people, they were elderly and bedbound, so they had caregivers, hired caregivers come in. So it was those caregivers who were first infecting the patients at home. And then our second round of COVID patients were families who were able to take their loved ones out of the nursing home. So that was our second round of COVID patients, nursing home patients.
Why don't we go into this, Ellen? So I was researching you, and it says something about, you can explain this more about, you learned the death doula by the Buddhist monk. What is that?
Right. Okay. So when I was the volunteer for 5 years, I was teamed up with this Buddhist monk who was a chaplain.
Okay.
So he was meeting a lot of homeless people who had no one to be around them as they died. So he took it upon himself to handpick volunteers and train them to be death doulas. A death doula is a companion, someone who is by your side, so you are not alone through this process. So it was actually quite entailed, this training. I mean, he brought on, he was hand in hand with a social worker for each session that he was presenting, our therapist, a musician who we have musicians in hospice care who are therapists as well. Oh, wow. And yeah, it was like a 6-month program that he just created because he felt the need to have a vigil of volunteers who were doulas. So a 24/7 vigil for these individuals who had no one. And it's a companion as one journeys to end of life.
So you went on like with homeless people and did this for them then, or?
Well, they actually were admitted to this floor, this hospice floor in this nursing home. It was actually in the Bronx. And so they were admitted and had no one.
Wow.
Yeah. So this Buddhist monk chaplain trained a bunch of us that we would be doulas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad that goes on. That's really sad in general, whether they're homeless or even if they do have a home, if they're all by themselves, it's sad.
Absolutely.
So, as we move toward the end of the interview with the last 2 questions, Ellen, can you tell people what you want them to get out of this book?
Peace of mind.
Okay.
Yes, it goes through the book. In the various stories, goes through, many different ways that, an illness affects the terminally ill patient and the caregiver. So I've gotten a lot of good feedback from the book that it in fact does help. And you don't have to be the terminally ill person or the caregiver of that terminally ill person. I've had people tell me that it's for everyone to read because it is a difficult subject and it gets the subject talked about. It prepares one for the end. You're saying we're speaking to the millennials. This book would be perfect to bring to your parents. Everyone read it because it's a quick read, and I meant it to be a quick read. I mean, you could sit down in 50 minutes and read the book, and it's completely educational on the subject of death. So what I want to get out of the book is for people to have peace of mind.
Again, Ellen Long Stillwell. The book is Love, Death, Love. And again, if you're listening to us for the first time, please like, subscribe, and share this interview on whatever platform you're listening to us on. With the last question. So, Ellen, what's next for you? Obviously, you're going to keep continuing on helping people. Is that correct? Is there another book in the works? What are we thinking?
Well, actually, a colleague of mine suggested, let's do another book and each of us write a chapter. So that's a possibility. But, I'm always doing more education. So last semester, I took a nursing course and my professor read the book, loves the book, And there's a new program for educating nurses and nurse practitioners, because in nursing school, there's not a course on death. In medical school, there's not a course on death. So there is a new course for hospice and palliative care for nurses, for nurse practitioners. And I've been invited to be one of the teachers. So I'll be teaching the course, caring for the patient nearing end of life. I'm really very excited about it. It's a series of 6 courses. I'm teaching one. It's 36 hours in all, and it's all on the computer. It's not in, you know, you could take your time to take the course, and I would highly recommend it. And I'm very excited to be teaching it.
All right. So we'll end with where people can find more about you, where they can get the book, where they can look for the course, if you want to just dive into all that.
Of course. Well, I have a website just completed. I'm so excited about it. And it's www.ellenlongstillwell.com. And, you know, Stillwell is Stillwell. It's so commonly misspelled. So, yeah, that's how you can find me.
All right.
ellenlongstillwell.com.
And as far as the book, they can get it on your website, correct?
Well, it can be ordered on my website or Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. Yeah, and directly from the publisher, balboapress.com. But it's all on the website to be helpful.
Ellen, thanks so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And thank you very much, Rob. Thank you.